Alrighty, and this is a topic that, going back to role play games, one of the biggest challenges to a game master is how do you keep players in your game week after week, month after month, year after year. The Nikos campaign arc is generally 6 years long, and so like many players feel daunted by that. But the challenge is that if you follow these guidelines, you're going to make it feel like it's so natural that they'll simply continue and they won't even realize how much time has passed and they'll be able to conclude. So, the first thing you want to do is have a variety of experiences. Be aware of the classic trope of knock down the door, take the monster's treasure, gain your experience, and move on. But also realize there are puzzles that you could do, there are riddles that could happen, could be some mystery. Try to mix it up a little bit and play a few of each type over time. Maybe there are ones that you're really good at and you'd like to do them all the time because it's really easy for you, but you need to mix it up because the players may have found that that one isn't what they necessarily want to do every week. So mix it up, come up with a variety of player experiences. I've got an entire video on those, and you'll be able to find those once I link them up, once I finish the video. But the second is to look at the level of perceived danger and the management of the dangers in your sessions. If every week your players are terrified they're going to die, that kind of pressure is not something that they're necessarily going to like all the time. And even if that was, you still want to mix it up a little bit because it's more challenging when you're not certain. So therefore, have a mixture and holding on to the perception of danger. I jokingly say that if I haven't put at least one player into a near-death experience, I haven't done my job. But that's not always the case. But generally speaking, you want to have a perception of the danger so that the players don't become complacent or think that they can run roughshod over the story or the NPCs that you develop. Next is you want to build a narrative that is not only believable but visceral. The players can feel it, whether it be maybe you drop some names from their family or you suggest some cultural link or whatever. When you build the story out, you want it to feel real so that the players will want to engage with it. Because most of us are more interested in a story that has to do with ourselves than we do with stories that have to do with other people. And so, although it's kind of nice to say, "Well, go save the princess," the reality is that most players want to save themselves or get themselves out of trouble. This also means that your descriptions of locales, especially like scene settings, needs to be panoramic and visual. So you want them to be able to perceive of how far away is the shovel sticking in the dirt or how many yards to the fence line so they can determine whether they want to run and jump it. These kind of visual descriptions provide a richer experience for the players, and it also gives a better place for them to push back into the story and make part of it their own. A critical skill that a game master needs to develop is the idea of interpreting the dice rolls. Yes, it's easy to say, well, you rolled against a number and you missed. You rolled against a number and you hit. Your weapon does this kind of damage. But those terms are player terms. They're not persona terms. So learn how to interpret the die rolls in the context of what's going on in the game. Now, the Nikos RPG mechanism is built for this with the idea of partial successes and full successes, so the players can instantaneously see whether they did as well or better than their opponent. But the idea of then interpreting the dice into the narrative makes it feel more real, and therefore the players will embrace the games more readily and want to be more a part of the story because they will feel and see in their mind's eye the things that are happening. And for those that have aphasia, they'll certainly be able to have a better understanding of the physical displacement they are with the items in the milieu and or the distances they have to travel within the scene. This next one is kind of a funny place to go, but player inclusion and inequity. And in here, I'm not necessarily talking about the kinds of issues that our culture talks about today, but the idea of player inclusion and equity means that you're giving every player at the table a chance to shine, to have narrative, to have dialogue, to feel the threats and dangers, but you're also providing them with equity, that you're giving them a fair shake and you're playing to their strengths and you're playing within the framework that you've built in a way that they all feel like they're part of the group. A fun one here is also to consider building skills that will keep players on task. For example, if the adventure is meant to have them travel across country to do something, certainly a riding skill on some kind of animal becomes useful. Perhaps they want to build a new skill of endurance running, parkour, or whatever. You want to make sure that the skills availability makes it fit into what the tasks at hand are for the characters, so that the game feels like it makes sense. The idea that if you have a treatise that they can get a hold of that is the ins and outs of an ancient culture's tea ceremony, that's far less palatable than perhaps a skill on how to read the people in a room or whatever. And so make sure that your skills keep the players on the tasks, not only that you want them on, but the ones that they've stated that they want to be on, so that their advancement will feel more natural and somewhat homogenous, because they're able to just add whatever skills they want to along the process. In addition to that, you really have to be the master of the game. And for this, you have to look to several different things. You do have to know the rule system that you're playing under. You need to understand the protocols of communication, the idea of sharing time and letting each person speak, perhaps working on the tendency we have in our culture to speak over each other and basically guide the players to be better, more kind and courteous players. Because when you're the master of the game, players want to come back and enjoy that experience because it's not as chaotic or frustrating as perhaps another storyteller. The next thing you want to do is, as you're running your games, especially with players that have skills and experience in roleplay, ask leading questions. Ask open questions. If you've got a player who's a little confused or a little doubting of what they can or can't do, then you ask leading questions. But choosing which one is actually the skill. You determine whether or not you should be guiding a player to make a decision or allowing them to literally choose their own path. And by choosing to use either leading questions in the first case or open questions in the latter, you're going to have a better play experience because the players are going to be getting what they want out of the sessions. That, of course, means you have to go to the next part, which is being a good listener and responding well to feedback. If a player feels frustrated, respond to the frustration and clear the issue. If they are if they are wanting to know more information, perhaps you haven't described well enough, listen and therefore respond with feedback. This is also to make sure that you also have a rather tough skin, because sometimes a player says something that is caustic. Perhaps they didn't mean it the way you took it, and therefore you have to be a good listener to be able to respond appropriately to the feedback. Of course, in all of this, I know that I ramble quite a bit, but the focus should be on fun, of course. If you are playing a game and it's a burden, and if you play a game and the players are not having fun, they're not going to continue. So if you want a long-term campaign, you got to focus on the fun. Make sure you've got some clever bits, some funny bits, some dramatic bits, and some danger. These are all things that the players are seeking because they're wanting to play a role-play game. And then finally, in any session where you're going to be telling stories or running a game, you need to put in some work. I have several players that have commented on the difference of being in a game that I'm administering, where I've done some of the background legwork and built out the physical portion of the game. Whereas other game masters, they will say things like they phoned it in, like they weren't engaged and they didn't do any effort. And I'm as guilty as anyone else that sometimes I will feel the proclivity to phone it in or play on autopilot. But the reality is that a game session that is going to be dynamic and draw more players in is going to be one wherein you've done some of the effort of bringing the game to the people in a way that they would enjoy. And finally, I want to thank you for playing, whether you're playing in my games online or whether you're playing at your local game store. The community of role play gamers greatly appreciate you being here. If you like the video, make sure you follow us here on Twitch. If you want more information, check out our YouTube page. I'm going to give you the page with all the information in a second. But I just wanted you to know how much I appreciate you being here, and hope that I'll see you again in another video. As I said, if you're looking for information on the Nikos RPG actual game, check out nikosrpg.com, which has product info and merchandising. You can also go to nikosrpg.info for information on the story, lore, and so much more. We'd also invite you to join our Discord, which is available down below this screen right here on Twitch. And you can join us via audio in that fashion, and also get an opportunity to check out the notes from our games groups. For more information on the campaigns itself, do check out my other videos here on Twitch and also at Nikos RPG in YouTube. And finally, if you want to be a part of our community, you can join us directly at